One day I noticed a young faculty member go through the mailroom next door, and at least I thought she was faculty. She looked younger than most students, but she seemed comfortable in going into the mailroom. I hadn't seen her before, but after asking, I found that she taught speech and had been at the college for several years. Why hadn't I seen her? After several weeks had passed, I saw that she had entered my back door looking for the copy machine. I introduced myself in the Meta copier, and she immediately began collating her handouts. I reintroduced myself and suggested that she might be interested in bringing her class down for a session in a computer lab. She smiled and basically said, "What?" So I began to elaborate, and I asked her to follow me across the hall to the lab with all those terminals, all the while suggesting how our students might have a hands-on experience concerning the examples that I had seen her in her copies. Well, she went willingly, smiling all the while. I was lost in that smile and the knowing nods of her head. If I'd spent any time trying to listen, I would have discovered that she was clueless what I was talking about. It didn't help that I actually started a blather in my attempt to impress and keep her engaged and smiling at me. It only ended because she was going to be late for class. I didn't see her for several weeks. It was clearly a strike, a miss, and game over. Then, suddenly, she was at my back door and saying something to me. I was astonished and a bit surprised. So maybe that's why I didn't register what she was saying. She didn't have time to repeat it, but it was almost like it was on a 4-second delay. I saw her lips move, and then a few seconds later, I heard the words, "It's so hot. Do you happen to know if there's a pool nearby?" A pool? Nearby? My friend operates the college pool just a 5-minute walk from here. It's Olympic size, heated, and it's not too hot. It's free and available to all staff, even beautiful part-time speech teachers. But I didn't say that. What I said was, I had a very nice pool that I never use, and I can give you my address and a note from my landlord should she ever ask who you might be. This confused reply on my part was matched by the confusion on her face. To my credit, I recognized this. Unfortunately, my response was to repeat the offer several times, thinking that somehow she hadn't understood my motive. I mean, I wouldn't be there watching you in your suit swimming back and forth using 2 or 3 strokes. I would be here at the college waiting for your return, thankful for my cooling offer. What was I thinking? I covered the mess by suggesting that perhaps next week we could have an early bite to eat before class. Her reply was, "Oh, I'm sorry, my parents are in town from back east. Thanks anyway, and thanks about the pool." That was the most graceful and kind shutdown I'd ever experienced. I was still a complete idiot, but she didn't embarrass me, nor did she make me feel that I was reaching a little too high and asking out a faculty member. So I'm not really good as a player. I'm not a ladies' man with practice lines. Certainly she would recognize that and maybe even find me charming without going so far as to label me as a complete doofus. True, I had stumbled badly. My first attempts at communicating were confusing and ill-advised. What was I thinking? I invited her to a pool at my apartment, except I was going to stay here, and she didn't know me well enough to even have a cup of coffee. And my attempt to rectify that with a lunch invitation was shut down with a classic, "My parents are visiting from back east." Well, I've heard that before. Actually, I hadn't, but it sounded like a classic block. However, I had a secret weapon. I still had the only operating and accessible copy machine on the campus. All I had to do was wait. Waiting for water to boil takes about 4 hours in mental time. Waiting several days for a second chance to talk to a beautiful woman can take several months. If I had a printout of my thoughts of the various rehearsals of what I was going to say, well, that would be several boxes of computer paper with the blue lines and the perforated holes. There were a lot of words. My days were basically normal, and I did my work. I was congenial with staff, and I was functioning at a high level. But on the days that I knew she had classes, I noticed that I was losing some focus, glancing out the door several times a minute. It's good to take a break, stretch your legs, get a cup of coffee, warm your coffee with a refill. I had many cups of coffee that week. Why not just add a case of jitters to my increasing nervousness? The following week, on one of my coffee refill walks, I saw through my open door that she had pulled into the parking lot. She was driving an oxidized green Hornet. It was the ugliest car that I had seen in a while. Well, it made it easier to spot her coming on campus. The problem was that the lot was just below a loading dock that stretched maybe 100 feet. At one end was the mailroom, where part-time faculty had their campus mail, and then they would exit through to another door into the main library and then on to other buildings. My problem was that my door was on the other end of the loading dock. This is where my copy machine lived. And if you didn't need copies, then she could vanish. She was in the mailroom. Should I go over and check my mail? I could then accidentally run into her, say a few words, and then what was I going to say? Which of the several thousand practice words was going to establish my credentials as a reasonable person instead of a techno-geek stalker with a pool? Should I wait, confident that after checking her mail she would realize that she had copies to make? There was a bathroom in the mailroom. Perhaps she was changing into teacher clothes after her swim in some other pool. How confident was I? Of course, she didn't need copies. She was going to come over and with some fake need just to talk to me. And we will talk about the weather, and I will ask her about her parents' visit, and then I will ask her to an early dinner or late lunch. No problem. I should just wait. So I waited for about 45 seconds, which was about 2 hours in mental time. And then I was out the door, heading down the loading dock to the mailroom. On the way, I was trying to find the right words, the best words in that jumble of potential phrases that was locked up in my frontal cortex. Where are they? They were just here. I'd been stumbling over them all week. Crap. And there she was, sorting through her correspondence. She looked up and smiled, and I said hi. And then I went into the bathroom. I stayed in there a while. Clearly, I kept quiet. Nothing worse than a flushing toilet while exiting to meet a woman. I washed my hands several times, then I came out to find an empty room. Perhaps she had gone to my office to make copies. So I raced down the loading dock, entered my office to find the copy machine sitting there all by itself. The lights were on, but no one was home. Well, that was really smooth. Was that strike 4 or maybe 5? What was I thinking? Hi? I was doomed to being awkwardly single. I'm writing as a response to several recent events, the birth of a granddaughter being the most significant. The flag on this blog has a need of an edit. It should be 13 people, not 12. All of the people in that photo are dependent upon 2 individuals getting beyond the awkwardness of meeting and developing a relationship. Some of the 12 wouldn't exist if we had failed. Some would exist, but would have found their lives very differently. Certainly they would not have been in Disneyland on that summer day of 2015. I was thinking about that and then realizing how badly my plans failed. And it caused me to ask, how is this possible? I titled this blog, How It All Started, as a statement, but in truth, it could be a question. And the answer to the question is simple. It didn't start because of my attempts. I was failing badly, one misstep after another. And the beautiful speech instructor was not without fault herself. Years later, I discovered that my final idiotic move of saying hi and then disappearing into the bathroom was seen as a brush-off. Up until that point, she recognized that I was interested. But my failure to follow up was insulting, and she wouldn't accept that. Perhaps if I had continued my goofy approaches, I would have finally been seen as a nice but hapless person. The fact, as she saw it, that I had distanced myself had given her second thoughts, and thoughts that she acted upon. The next week, she appeared at my door, and she didn't need any copies. I summoned the small scraps of courage that was left in my psyche, and I asked if she would like to come early next week, and perhaps we could get dinner before her class began. And she said yes. A small miracle had occurred, and I did not have a clue how it happened. I suppose I realized there were significant minefields ahead of us. We were both 30 years old and had at least 10 years of adult decisions under our belts. Not all of these decisions were wise. I knew my mistakes, well, most of them anyway. How would she react to them? Do I just dump them upon her like an avalanche? And then I could watch her spinning out of control down the mountainside, head over tea kettle, gasping for breath until the final crush at the end. Wasn't a pretty sight. Do I parse them out? Is it possible that she might not run screaming from them? I have a child, I was married, and it failed. This could be a deal breaker, but maybe she loves kids. And then, of course, there's her life. She hasn't been kept in a freezer only to be let out to teach classes at a community college. What dark secrets did she have? Had she been in prison? Was she institutionalized? Does she need to take meds? What was I doing? I had a date with a stranger that probably had a past. I had a past, and I hadn't resolved a whole lot of it. This was nuts. It was much better to live alone and not be exposed as an idiot. Worse yet, to discover the idiot that's across the table. I gotta think. I gotta be proactive. What if she's boring? What if I'm boring? What restaurants are close by? I didn't have a lot of time. There was a very firm, hard stop to one interaction. She had a class to teach, and I had to go back to work. Maybe this is a good thing, something I can work with. So I planned to take her to a little restaurant that had a simple menu, had windows looking into the ice rink that was next door. If the conversation lagged, we could always watch the skaters. And the day came when the beat-up, oxidized Green Hornet pulled into the parking lot. Somehow we got to the restaurant, which is at the bottom level of the local mall. It was a fairly new mall then and had some nice architectural elements. There was a circular area at the end with an interesting sculpture installed on the bottom floor, and our entrance was on the second floor so we could look over the railing, witness the sculpture, and watch the people on the escalators. It was quite pleasant. I can't remember the small talk that occurred as we passed through the mall, except the moment when we reached the railing as we looked over to the lower level. Have you ever come up to a railing like this and just felt like you had to jump over it? Actually, no. Never has this suicidal thought ever come up. I was torn. Should I just run away? Was this a Woody Allen movie and we had to drive between the oncoming headlights because it wasn't really a truck, it was two side-by-side motorcycles? What? Who would say this? Is there more to come? Could I walk back to the college in time? Run away. Wait, was this a test? Say something nuts and see if he sticks around? Calm down. This was unguarded speech. I should be thrilled that she trusted me with innermost thoughts. Innermost thoughts of a crazy person. So, we used the escalators. Somehow the skaters were never watched. She shared that she was a vegetarian. The place had salads and soups and tuna fish sandwiches. Okay, tuna's meat, but never mind. Point is that we worked things out. We were aware of the dangers of oversharing, but it was important to be open. Most of our past simply came forward naturally. So I met my best friend there at the mall, the mother of my children, the partner of all my future experiences. It wasn't the result of my success, but rather the result of my failures. A few weeks later, we had an official nighttime date at a real restaurant in Albany. She dressed up, I dressed up. I even ironed a crease in my slacks. Of course, this meant that I left my wallet at home because of the crease, but she forgave me anyway.